Topic 3. This
Oh, bless
comes
you.
from patreon.com/kindafunnygames, where Kenny Char backed us to get his topic read. He says, game endings that stuck with you the longest. Not necessarily the best or your favorites, though it would make sense that your favorite endings
So,
would also be the
spoiler
most
alert.
memorable, but rather the endings that were most memorable to you. He has 2 that I'll bring up after. I don't want to get in your heads.
Sure.
I had a chance to think about this, and I will go first because I've
Please
thought
do.
about it.
Please
Because
do.
like his examples are good.
Okay.
But like the game ending that I think has stuck the most with me, one of the ones. There's 2 that spring to mind. One's I beat the dead horse on all the time on this one, but the one that really stuck with me was the end of Walking Dead season 1, episode 5. Like when that ends. And I don't know if we want. Oh, do we want to spoil stuff?
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
It's been
We're
out
talking
forever.
about game endings.
You had your chance. Nick's doing the taps, and now we're in the zone. Like obviously, it's not even so much. I mean, it's totally the death of Lee and everything else, right? But it's. I remember playing that game in like you finished episode 4, I remember, and he had been bit, and it ends, and it was like, all right, like I'm a big Walking Dead fan. It's like, are they gonna cut his arm off? Are they gonna get around this?
Yeah,
Because
they're
too
gonna
much
figure out
time's
a way.
passed. Too much time has passed. They're not, and you get back and they saw off the arm, and you're like, ugh. What a cop out, and it isn't that. And so then you have this entire episode where you're coming to grips with you're gonna die, let alone that. You get to the end and then have to you teach Clementine everything you
Yeah,
know.
he's like, what, 7 or something? Or
Yeah, something like that. I
6,
think she just
7?
turned 7 or whatever. That's
And-
how
and
the guy
it's
gets
like,
us.
okay, little girl, here's how you shoot a gun.
Yeah.
You need to shoot me in the head.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's
like,
just
what?
it was so well done, and like I'll never forget. And granted, I'm playing it ahead of time in the theater at IGN with the lights off, and it's me, Job from IGN, and Casey. Or I'm sorry, Job from Telltale and Casey from IGN, and like just like the gun muzzle goes off and it goes black, and then it starts that somber song that take us back, oh take us back now. And like I have the 1 tear rolled down. Job is
cried.
full on
I
crying.
cried.
Yeah, and it's just like
I don't cry at a lot of things, especially not in, well, not most things in video games. Like I
What was
can
that
always
bad
see when
movie
they,
we went and we didn't see a bad movie, but it wasn't a movie you should be crying at that you were crying at, and I looked over at you and you're like, shut up.
Yeah, it's as I've gotten older, I seem to cry more
Ant-Man. Was it
easily.
Ant-Man? I think you cried at Ant-Man.
Hey, it was
cried
emotional.
I don't know.
Anyways, but bleh. I've now lost my
sorry.
sense. Anyways, I was crying during that game.
Yeah. You don't cry
so I
during
was-
most things
I
you're
don't cry-
saying,
Oh, I
is
was
what you
saying,
said.
whenever, so at the beginning of Mass Effect 3, when they like do the kid and the kid whatever blows up, and everybody's like, it's supposed to be this really emotional moment. I was like,
I hate that kid, and he was badly
yeah,
animated.
I hated that kid. He was
sucked.
stupid.
Yeah.
Why? But Dana at IGN, she was like, "Oh, that was
She had a kid,
and
right?
she had a kid." I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
maybe this is like a motherly thing,
Yep,
but
yep,
I
yep.
don't give a shit."
And that was the
whatsoever."
thing that like so the my story with the Walking Dead ending being so memorable and being so like devastating is I remember leaving IGN, getting a ride home, and still like racking my brain, going over it, and then I woke up the next morning and I think took Porty for a walk, and I had my headphones on, and that song, I bought the song right away, and that song came back on, and immediately all those feelings rushed back, and even now, like I just tried to describe it as like there was a thumbprint on my soul from it, you know what I mean? Of like it was always there with me, and then you jump ahead to Walking Dead season 2, episode 1, when episode 1, when Clem gets in and meets Luke for the first time and she's eating at the table.
Yeah.
And you have the choice on the option wheel if you want to talk about, like, you start talking about Lee. And I started talking about Lee, and then I started crying. Because that was the first time it ever, and that upon reflection of that, Porty's home.
He's back.
On reflection of that, it was the fact that I didn't cry. I thought I was crying saying goodbye to Clem, you know, at the end of season 1. But in reality, I was crying saying goodbye to Lee. And that hadn't dawned on me till I was sitting there telling Luke about it at the table, and that's when I started crying again. And I was like, "Oh shit!"
was like, Jesus.
I thought I was in love with this little girl because traditionally I hate children.
in love with
But in
little
reality,
girl.
I wasn't. I was in love with a big black man named Lee Everett, and I still am. And I'm in love with Dave Fennoy too.
David Noy is amazing.
But like that, I mean, like
Yeah.
that, like that's the big one. That is like, I mean, we're talking about what, nearly a year and a half probably, like between those two moments, and like how much I think about that and how much that had an impact on me and why I love The Walking Dead. And the other one is Gone Home, which I always talk about on the show, where you know
I didn't really like it that much.
you're stupid.
It was okay.
I finished
don't
it.
hate
Remember, the credits rolled, and I immediately walked in and hugged you, and I couldn't tell you anything about it because you hadn't played it yet.
Yeah.
And like that
I was like,
Get out! I think you were playing Guild Wars 2.
Oh, I was like,
you couldn't.
I'm in a dungeon. Get the fuck out of here.
You wouldn't stop. I remember I had to kneel at the chair next to you and hug you like your torso because you were doing something.
I was like, I'm like doing fractals or something. This is hard shit. I can't be bothered with it.
Right.
Please go away.
What stuck with you, Christine?
Well, you touched on it earlier, and I really, honestly, it pains me to say it, Mass Effect 3, and not in a good way.
Oh yeah, because you were Miss Mass Effect.
I still love Mass Effect.
Sure.
I'm very excited for Andromeda, but the ending of Mass Effect 3 put me in a depression that I can't quite describe. And it's to the point where Mass Effect is normally one of those games where I would go play all the DLC.
Sure.
I couldn't touch the DLC. in that game.
Yeah.
I couldn't go back. I played the alternate ending or whatever, the better ending. I don't know, like that's not at all how I wanted things to go, and it didn't make any sense to me. Like the 3 choices made no sense to me.
Yeah.
So it just like sent me in the spin of confusion and bad feelings because I didn't know what was going on.
You were drinking hard, doing coke.
Because everything up to that point was beautiful.
Yeah.
Fucking beautiful. I cried several times just because of like really poignant moments or whatever. Sure. And I was like, oh my God, this is so good. This is so good. And then as you're like running down to the Reaper and then it hits you, and you were like, half dead, basically, like crawling. I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? Okay, well, maybe this kind of makes sense, I guess. Like, you're gonna kill it somehow, even though you're basically dead.
Yeah.
And then coming up to the Citadel, and it's like, elusive man, like, I was like, what is happening? What's happening?
Yeah, I know.
Where's what?
Yeah.
So it just left me feeling lost and confused, kind of.
Sure.
And
sure.
I switched and loving that series so much. That's obviously not the way you want to leave it. So that was like the most heartbreaking game ending for me. For things that I thought were really clever, it's kind of similar to what you just touched on with Walking Dead, but with Red Dead, and I know I keep talking about Red Dead today, but
that's a good game to talk about.
That ending shocked me. Because I wasn't, you kind of like ride home after the last mission.
Yeah, you're like, oh man, this is a weird place for it to end.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, well now, I've got my family and like we're going to make some eggs or something. And we're, I'll teach my son how to do some stuff. And we'll go around the farm. And I don't know, it's like, it's a weird happy ever after game, which never happens. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, so I thought that was how it was going to be different. I was like, oh, this is going to be different because it's going to leave happy. And you're going to feel good. And then they just murder the shit out of you in front of everybody. And I was like,
oh, no.
No, I sat there. I think I sat there like slack-jawed for a while because I was like, are you fucking kidding me? But then as you take up the mantle as his son, I was like, that's rad.
Yeah, that was
like,
a smart
this is really
call.
cool. And then you can kind of take over... then you have like the one final mission where you get your revenge for your father, and I was like, I like this. I like this a lot.
That was a well done one for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, Nick, you're in an interesting spot. You
Yeah.
haven't played as many games. As
I haven't really finished that many games either.
Now you just beat Limbo yesterday.
I just did beat Limbo. Yeah.
Did that do anything?
That
for
had an
you?
effect on me. Yeah, I mean that game has obviously that's very very subjective. They don't give you any context to what's going on in the story whatsoever. I guess we're getting into kind of spoilery territory here.
I spoiled the shit out of everything.
You did. That's great. Even though to be perfectly honest, I don't know how Mass Effect ends. I stayed blind to it.
It's either green, red, or blue, right?
Yeah, it's like,
and none of them are good.
They're all very similar.
and I do on purpose. I still respect the hell out of all those developers. Like,
Yeah,
Sure.
no, that's
yeah.
the problem. That honestly, I'm sorry. That's one of the problems with the whole conundrum here.
Yeah.
Is that people went so fucking crazy about the ending that you felt like you couldn't say and you couldn't be critical of the ending
Right.
and not be like,
I fucking hate all of them.
you can't
They
immediately
suck.
preface
Like,
yeah, guess what? I didn't like the final 20 minutes of Mass Effect 3.
Right.
The fucking 80 hours before
Right.
it were fucking awesome, with the
Amazing.
exception of Mass Effect 1, which sucked, but Mass Effect 2 was really good.
Sure.
3 was expanding on that.
Sorry, I forgot at this one point. I just want to bring it up really quick. So, the Mass Effect 3 ending affected me to the point. So, this was recently. This was like a few months ago. I was just rolling through the internet and I was looking at fan art. And I happened to see some fan art that someone drew of Commander Shepard and Kaidan. And it was like a wedding on the Citadel. And I nearly lost it at my desk. And I'm almost nearly losing it now. Because I was just like, no, like I needed that. Like I needed something. Like I can't stand the thought of like Kaidan being alone. This is really pathetic. Please
It's
talk.
not.
Please talk.
No,
No, keep going. You're doing great.
That's good though. Like here's the deal though. Like
Also, Kaidan
that,
sucks.
Kaidan doesn't suck. Fuck you.
That just means that these stories are impacting, right? Which is good. That means they're having an effect, which is good. And to me, like I don't know that I've had that experience just yet.
Sure.
I don't know that I've actually sat and played a video game and been like, shit, that was as powerful as the ending of The Dark Knight to me. Where at the end of The Dark Knight, I had that experience that you're talking about, where I walked out of the theater and the world around me was just a little different.
Yeah.
Just a little
Yeah,
different,
yeah, yeah.
and it'll never be the same again.
Right.
And so, you play a game like Limbo, like I finished it last night, and it was cool. It was very awesome and very avant-garde, and it has sort of an ending where, I don't know. Do you remember vaguely the ending of Limbo?
Yeah, when you smash through the
smash
glass.
through the glass.
It's your sister, right? You're getting your sister out of limbo.
Yeah,
or
well,
whatever.
you're trying to find her the whole time, and she's like sitting on the grass, and you walk up to her, and she looks over, and then it kind of.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's was awesome, right?
Yeah. Now, for the record, how I was talking about purgatory and your sister and all that. None of that is explained in the game.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
didn't know that it was
I
your
remember
sister.
from
I just
previews
knew
and
you were-
interviews.
I knew you were
Previews and
looking
interviews.
for someone.
Yeah.
And I knew that because the game is called Limbo, that you're in limbo, and
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and then if you're going off of any sort of religious aspect, like a kid that dies before a certain age is in limbo, right? Isn't that the way it's supposed to go?
Well,
Or
if you're not
If you're not
baptized,
baptized.
you go to limbo or
sure.
purgatory.
purgatory, rather. So I mean, I kind of
What's the difference
brought.
between limbo and purgatory?
I think they're a
different
synonym.
names.
But
Yeah.
I mean, like this is also I don't
really know. I don't want to get that wrong, and I don't want to offend anyone out there that's hyper religious.
I was
like, you
more
idiot.
when I was in Catholic mass, I was way just more fixated on Jesus' abs because he had some killer abs.
He
What about the
was
food?
fucking
The host?
cut up
I
like
don't know.
Jared Leto,
No.
man.
I never went to church, so I never
no.
got to experience.
Did your Jesus look like Jared Leto? Because my Jesus looked a lot like Jared Leto.
Because
Hot
he had a
Jesus.
more manly face. He had more defined cheekbones than
Did he?
Jared Leto. I think. Yeah.
I don't know. Jared Leto can have some really like.
All right,
when
I'm
he gets
just.
skinny,
I tell you right
that's
now,
what I'm
my
talking about,
Jesus
is when
did
he gets a
not
little skinny
look.
and the long hair. So yeah, so to me that defining
come.
experience. I mean, I've had games that I really enjoyed finishing. Like
Yeah, of course.
like I loved finishing Half-Life back in the day.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Half-Life 2, you're like, all right, it's crazy shit happened, and you're like, that's cool. And I can't remember how any of the episodes, episode 1 or 2 ended.
That's funny. Because like that's the one where it's like supposed to be that's the one that people always yell at me for not having played because that's supposed to have such an emotional ending.
Well, it made a real impact on Nick.
Yeah. Well, no,
I-
I don't think you said you didn't play him.
No, I played them.
Oh, you did.
I
play
can't
'em.
remember how they
Isn't
ended.
there a whole thing with the hand against the glass and stuff?
Fuck, I can't remember.
Okay. Not like that. That's when you're like, oh fuck, a head crabs on that lady.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
no,
I'd have
this
to
is
go.
what's-
I'd
that's
have
what-
to go way back.
The problem I have with it too is like I feel like since you haven't, it immediately then had that experience. I could just flood you with games to play right now, and I feel like by even mentioning them in that breath, you then go in with that expectation. And
Sure.
then you get there, and maybe you don't have that.
Like I know The
interpretation.
Last of Us has an amazing ending, right?
Yeah.
Or well, I actually know the ending, which is unfortunate.
Sure.
Oh, that is unfortunate.
Well, whatever. I mean,
It happens
I,
sometimes.
I like sometimes just hearing the stories too. To me, and I think that there's a certain fun factor for that. Like
Right.
hearing how Mass Effect ends. To be perfectly honest, you just saved me like 50 hours. That's awesome.
Yes.
And knowing that it has an impact on you, whether positive or negative. Because by the way, a negative impact is not necessarily bad. A lot of films that I've watched ended, and I'm like, I don't want that. No, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
cool. Obviously, this is a different experience than what you're talking about because a lot of people were like, that just is fucked up. But at
no,
the same
I mean-
time,
No, I
there's
just think it's
something
more-
to that, right?
I think it's that people feel more invested in a game they've played for 300 hours
Exactly.
versus a movie they've watched for 2.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, so
but at
it's
the
like,
same
that's
time,
why they think the outrage is a little bit more intense on those kinds of things.
but there is it also. And let me ask you
Corey,
this:
what are you licking?
You're not at the zoo anymore. Knock it off. Act like a real dog.
He's
Eating
looking
the
at
floor.
It's like I'm just gonna walk to the other part of the floor where you can't see me and like.
He's not that smart.
He is sometimes.
Oh, well, Colin's
Who's that,
here.
Porty? Is that
Colin's
Colin?
here. Go get him.
Porty, come here.
Pretty.
You look at some of the most classic works in literature, the most classic works in film, and some of them just don't end the way you want them to end, right?
Yeah.
And most notably, and obviously most famously, is the example of Romeo and Juliet. Spoilers. That every time I've seen any depiction of that, I'm like, I wonder if they'll change this one. Now you can't because it's a tragedy.
Taylor Swift did. So
Did
there you
she?
go.
Yeah, she did.
Well, Taylor
the,
Swift can
the
do
song "Love Stories."
what Taylor
about
Swift
her.
wants to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't have the same impact, right? Those people have to
Yeah.
die. That
But
has
see,
to be
like this
tragic.
this is what's fascinating about what
Has
we're
to
talking
leave you
about
with
here.
a gut wrenching feeling in
It
your
does
stomach.
because not everything in life is happy.
We're talking
I think
about.
that's kind of what they were going for in
Yeah.
Mass Effect, but they could have done it in a way
should-
that to me made more sense. Like,
Yeah.
I think it was just out of left field
Sure.
it was. That struck me. I was like, what?
But I think what everyone wants is they want the
bad
Dark Knight
boy.
Rises ending, where you're like,
I already
"He's-
forgot that. What
he's
was it?
dead. Oh, he's not dead. He's drinking Fernet Blanca or Fernet Blanc, whatever it was.
Fernet.
Fernet. in Europe, and he's like, oh.
Yeah, he's
he
like,
gets to live
I'm really
happily
just
ever after.
banging Selena Kyle over here. Don't worry about
Don't
it.
worry, Alfred.
Yeah.
Sorry for your months of grief.
Yeah, what a
So
dick.
You get that.
man's a dick.
Sorry for giving no training to the cop who's about to go out and get fucking murdered
he's gonna
because
get
he doesn't
murdered.
know hand-to-hand combat like
Yeah,
that.
He
well,
didn't train
you
with
know.
fucking Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
guy
so I think
sucks.
everyone wants that. Everyone
It does suck.
that's everyone's preferred ending, which is like a little bit of tragedy. Oh wait, just fooled you. That heartbreak that you just felt, while meaningful. Don't worry, it really is a happy ending.
Well, this is what you're talking about. We're
that's a
talking
cop-out.
about earlier. We were talking about how the industry's changed, right? And the drive, and I think the fact that we can't argue. It can't be argued that games are art, but the problem is that when you try to argue with somebody that games are art and they don't believe you or they don't agree with you, it's because they haven't played the right games and they don't have that
Sure.
interest to do that, right? So, like for you, it'd be like, well, play Limbo, and play
Limbo.
Last of Us, and do you know what I mean? Or
Play
not,
Limbo. Watch my wife watch you play Limbo.
play Journey. You know what I
Right.
mean? Play all these games that where you are left with an ending you need to interpret. Or Last of Us is a game that ends, and I was like, I'm not going to spoil that one. I feel like that one's too
Yeah.
fresh.
Yeah,
and that's
don't
too.
do that one.
But
Not
like
for these people.
That was
Not
the
for
one
them.
where it ended, and I immediately started texting Neil, and I was just like, I can't believe this. And I was like, and he's like, well, that's your interpretation of it. And I'm like, I know, but I mean, like, there's a moment at that ending where you're presented with a choice, and I'm like, all right, I don't want to do this one. I'll wait for them to tell me about the other one. Oh, there is no choice. This isn't traditional video game bullshit where it's like, now you go A, B, and one of the endings. It's like, no, this is our story. We're telling you a story. This is our vision. This is our narrative. You're part of it.
Yeah.
And so it becomes like you've been playing this whole game as like, I'm making the choices I'm going to make and do the
I'm
things
in
I would
control
do.
of my
And then
destiny.
you get there and you're like, oh
You're
no,
not.
I've just been, Naughty Dog's been telling me a story masterfully.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And I think that, for me, for Limbo specifically, like, to me, that doesn't need to be necessarily a cut and dry. I'm not.
Go. I was like, someone's got shot.
For those of you
It's
that didn't
okay.
hear that,
It's okay.
a door just slammed.
I'm really skittish too at loud noises, just FYI.
So is Portillo, but he looks like he's fine.
That's why we like each other.
Let me clarify. I don't need there to be a definitive ending to something. I don't need there to be like. I don't mind if there's choices that lead to different endings.
Oh,
and
no,
there's,
no,
like,
no.
choices,
I
things
was
like
not.
that, so,
I
yeah.
think you were saying.
Yeah.
But I don't also need it to be 100% cut. I don't need it to be laid out for me. Like with Limbo,
You like
I'm
variety.
not. Well, it's not even about variety. It's about there was an emotion behind Limbo that was
Yeah.
there. It was an undercurrent of emotion that I don't need to know who that girl was.
Yeah.
At the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
To feel what I felt, and I was impacted. I got to the end of that. I was like,
Would your feelings change if you knew she was a stripper? That has no connection
make
to
me
that
happier.
man whatsoever.
Make me look forward to Vegas.
It's a
tomorrow.
random girl.
Yeah,
Random girl
Vegas.
sitting-
No, I mean maybe
There
sure.
is
but,
no GameStop Expo,
obviously
Christine.
they we're just going to the Olympic Gardens.
Is that a strip club?
That's very much a strip club. I think it's more of a brothel, actually. But that's my thing. Is like, no context is very powerful. It doesn't mean. It would. It would definitely change it if I knew she was his sister or his
Something else,
mother
yeah.
or him or whatever. I don't know, his girlfriend or a childhood love or something like that. But to me, it was just someone that I knew that was important to him, and that's someone that he'd go through heaven and hell for to get to and to save, and that's all that matters really. And that's why that game was. I mean, I'll remember that ending.
Have you read through some of the fan theories? Because it's interesting how simple that ending is, and yet how many different interpretations there are of it. So you should go like on Reddit and look it up and start reading, because it's just I found it really interesting.
Sure, I might. But to me, also like maybe I will. Maybe I will do that because I would like to see what other people's interpretations of it, and I think that's that. But when you talk about games as art, that is the power of art right there.
Yeah.
Is that it is an undefined thing that has an emotional impact on you that is different from you. Like from the three of us could look at something completely differently and have different emotional impact to it, but we still have a reaction to it, and that is Limbo was dope. That was a really good game. I'm glad I played it.
I'm glad you did. There's a lot of other stuff you need to play now. You need to play Journey.
wanna play
We
Journey.
need to play Journey.
I do want to play.
I'll get you
Journey.
code after
It's
this.
pretty
That'd be
short, too,
awesome.
so-
It's super short. That's 2 hours. That's totally
Yeah.
a movie. Just
Yeah,
sit there and
I
do it.
will totally do that
Do
after
you-
watching you talk to Genova for on
Longer than the game.
yeah, for longer than the game. I was like, fuck, I got to play this. And I love the idea behind it, right? I love just the simplicity of it, and that there's not a lot of, there's not characterization. There's not a lot of things that are being told to you. It's just it's a piece of art that's moving. And then when it's done, it's done. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll play it.